Welcome to Inside the Minnehaha County. I'm your host, Craig Dewey, and I also serve as the Assistant Commission Administrative Officer. Today we'll be discussing more details about Minnehaha County and different budget trends. And we're well served to have guests Commission Chair, Commissioner Gene Bender, as well as Commissioner Karski, who serves as the Vice Chair. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get started talking about specifics of the county budget, would you each mind introducing a little bit about your professional backgrounds?
Sure. So I was appointed to the Minnehaha County Commission in 2015. I was, before that, I continue to serve as an attorney at the Davenport Evans Hurwitz & Smith law firm. I do a lot of corporate work and a lot of employment and employee benefits work. And so that's been able to hold me in pretty good stead at the commission as we deal with a lot of those issues.
And I, for the last 30 plus years, have owned an insurance agency in town. I work with my oldest son, and we have 4 other staff. Before that, I was on the city council for Sioux Falls for 5 years. One of my advanced degrees is as a chartered financial consultant, and I enjoy this government gig. I love it.
Well, county government certainly is tasked with a number of responsibilities by state statute. They include a lot of the business of government. If individuals need to renew their license plate tags or get a birth certificate or a marriage license, they would come to the county. As well as public safety is the county's responsibility, and that would include law enforcement as well as jails and prosecution as well as public defense should someone qualify for a public defender. Additionally, counties conduct elections as well as manage the assessment process for property as property taxes are assessed and then distributed to the different units of government. Additionally, though, the county also has planning and zoning services for individuals who live outside of municipalities, and you are also tasked with paying for court costs by the courthouse, even though the judges themselves and their staffs are employees of the United Judicial System through the state of South Dakota. And then lastly, the counties also have some intergovernmental partnerships with the city of Sioux Falls as a few examples. One would be overseeing Metro Communications, which provides 911 emergency response services, as well as the Siouxland Heritage Museums, and then lastly, the Siouxland Libraries are ongoing continued partnerships. As we look more specifically, though, at Minnehaha County, how many employees does Minnehaha County have?
Well, it's interesting when you talk about that large breadth of responsibilities that the county has. It takes a lot of people to accomplish all of those tasks. So right now, Minnehaha County has about just shy of 580 employees, and almost 2/3 of those are all work in the public safety realm. So take care of folks after they're arrested through jail and through prosecution and public defense, and then into the court system. So a lot of our employees are tasked with public safety responsibilities.
So Commissioner Bender, you mentioned the fact that Minnehaha County has just shy of 580 positions. If we look ahead to the 2020 budget year, what do those new employees look like and what areas do they work in?
Well, you know, those 580 employees, I should have emphasized, those are full-time, part-time, and seasonal employees, because we do have some employees that come on primarily just for the summer season to work in the parks and to do some of that seasonal work. But of the new employees that we're proposing to add for the 2020 budget, all of those positions are all in the public safety, and we're looking at 20 positions, which is a combination of full-time and part-time positions.
Well, thanks for that rundown. And Commissioner Karski, government does collect its revenue through taxes. What are the revenue sources available to the county?
As you can imagine, the largest source of our expenses go to pay employees and benefits, and the county works to be a good employer, but the county assesses your properties, what's the valuation, and then we also collect the taxes for your property, but the county only keeps 21% of the revenues that are collected for the running of the general fund budget. Other parts where we receive revenue, an example would be when you pay your vehicle registration. There's a wheel tax and a registration fee. A large portion of that money comes back to the county. Our general fund budget is about $64.5 million. On top of that, we have a highway budget That's $16 million, and that $16 million is specifically tagged to highways, roads, bridges, culverts, equipment for the highway department, but it is not used for any sort of construction of like facilities or that type of thing for the highway department. In the last 7-8 years since 2012, our revenue growth has averaged 4%, or about $1 million a year. And that 4%, 1% of it is the increase in the consumer price index. The state tells us what we are able to take every year for the CPI. And then all that growth we see throughout Minnehaha County, all the new construction, about 3% of the revenue growth, the tax growth, comes from new development. So most of our revenues and fees are set by a specific level by state statute. It's called the mill levy, so much per $1,000 of value. So we can't increase that mill levy. All we can do is look at an opt-out in order to fund the budget needs that the county has that are growing at a rate faster than what our general fund revenues are able to grow at. It's important to note that counties receive absolutely no sales tax revenue. Only states and municipalities are authorized by statute to collect a sales tax. We do get about $600,000 here in the last 3 years from alcohol tax revenue that the state has agreed to share with the counties. And then other sources, small sources of revenue might be the bank franchise tax, where we get about $1 million a year, and that could go anywhere from $600,000 to $1.2 million. We just don't know where it's going to be at. So those are some of our revenue sources.
And with the different property tax dollars that are collected by the Treasurer's Office through each of the counties, Commissioner Bender, would you mind going into a little bit of detail about the split of those tax dollars and the different governmental units it goes to?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, and I think a lot of people don't realize that, as Commissioner Karski said, the county gets no sales tax revenue, and most of our funding does come through property taxes. We collect that property tax, but as Commissioner Karski said, we only keep 21% of that property tax. 28% goes to the city, who also gets sales tax revenue, and then the bulk of that property tax, 51% of that, goes straight to the school districts. And so it's interesting that we don't really keep very much of that property tax, even though it is basically our sole source of funding. There are some special levies that also might apply to folks that live out in some of the rural areas. There could be a levy for a library, for example, or sometimes there's special levies for townships and other special levies like that. But the bulk of the money that comes in is through property tax.
And one thing that also makes county governments unique is the sense that they differ from many of the other governmental units across the state, or even if you look at the federal government. What makes Minnehaha County unique as far as how its government is structured?
Yeah, Minnehaha County and every county in the state of South Dakota has, in Minnehaha County, we have 5 commissioners, and we're all equally equal authority, I guess you could say, compared to the city, the county, and the city, the state, and the federal government, where we have a city mayor, a state governor, and obviously a president, and then they also have the legislative branches. In the county, we don't have one executive that's in charge of the whole process. So a county commissioner is not only responsible for being a legislator, we're also an executor, and each one of us has different roles that we fill as a liaison to different departments. For example, some of my liaison roles are to the highway department, to the equalization office, and to the public defender office. And my job is to work with those department heads and to help them develop their budgets, assist them in managing their staff, that type of thing. There are 3 other elected officials: the auditor, the treasurer, and I'm sorry, it's 4, the auditor, the treasurer, the sheriff, and the register of deeds in most counties, specifically in Minnehaha County. Now, these elected officials, the treasurer, the auditor, etc., are free to run their operations as they see best. We have no control over that operation. All we control is the budget that and maybe staffing that they request. So they work with us budgetarily and for staffing.
And the state's attorney as well is included in that group.
I apologize. Yes, the state's attorney. I missed one. Oh, yes.
Counties certainly have a very wide breadth of responsibilities. I think now we'll go and take a break, and when we come back, we'll delve more into the budget process and how it looks for Minnehaha County. But let's take a quick look at what the Minnehaha County Highway Department's doing.
Cone season is upon us. Not that kind of cone, construction cones. Yes, we know that construction season can be frustrating, but you still have to follow the rules. When you see a stop sign, you need to stop. Yield still means yield. And you might want to slow down so you don't take a cone home with you. Respect the signs, follow the rules, and avoid an accident this construction season. Minnehaha County Highway Department, celebrating 100 years of happy highways.
Welcome back to Inside Minnehaha County. Today we have been discussing more details about what your county governments are responsible for with Commissioners Bender as well as Commissioner Karski. And as we go into this segment here, Commissioner Karski, we just got done talking a little bit about some of the financial responsibilities for county government and what the revenue sources are and budget. Later in the show, we'll be talking a little bit more about the 2020 budget specifically and the opt-out decision that you made. But let's start, Commissioner Bender, with the budgeting process. What does that look like for Minnehaha County?
Well, I think it is a kind of a unique process, particularly if you're familiar with other branches of government. As Commissioner Karski said, we have executive responsibilities as well as legislative responsibilities. So we work from the beginning to help build up our budget. We meet with our liaison departments. We all have different departments that we're responsible to meet with. They prepare kind of an initial budget and we go over that with them. And then they turn that into the auditor's office, who are great partners in building up the whole budget. And the auditor's office then will put all of those items into one large budget. And then we have several budget hearings where they're noticed meetings. The public is invited. We encourage people to come and attend those meetings. They're usually pretty intense meetings where we're going through each department's different budget requests with a lot of focus on the things that we ultimately have control of, because a lot of things are mandated to us by state statute. But after we have those budget hearings, then we make tough decisions about, we look at what our projected revenues are and we pare down the budget requests to a point where we can try to meet those requests, and sometimes it requires us to look at ways to try to increase revenue if we feel like the needs are such that the services are demanded or are mandated for us to provide. And so we had a vote on kind of a very preliminary budget a couple of weeks ago. We'll have a final vote on a preliminary budget at the very end of July. And then in September, very end of September, we're required by statute to approve our final budget. And so that's a little bit of how that process goes. But there's a lot of time and attention that staff and the auditor's office and human resources and then the commission office spend during those months of late April through the end of September to try to finalize a budget that we think is in the best interest of all the citizens of Minnehaha County.
Thanks, Commissioner Bender. One thing that I would appreciate if you could touch on as well is the fact that state law does require counties uniquely to pass a provisional budget, whereas other governmental units aren't. I
know, it's very interesting. It was interesting to me because I served on the Brandon Valley School Board for a number of years before I was appointed and then elected into this position. And I thought that was a unique requirement of state statute that you have to adopt this provisional budget. But then you have to still adopt a final budget. And it gives an opportunity for different mile markers along the road for citizens and staff to have input into that budget before the budget is finalized.
Well, and that provides a good segue, Commissioner Karski, to a project that you helped head up in terms of looking at the county budget in more detail and getting some input from different stakeholders in the private sector as well as the public sector. Could you talk a little bit more about what the Financial Action Network is and what it tried to do?
Yes. Shortly after I was elected in 2016, Bob Timian, who was former school board president for Sioux Falls School District, asked me if I had ever considered taking the Financial Action Network theory that the school board had used several times to the county level, and he filled me in on the details, and I took it to the county commissioners individually, and I said, what do you think? And everybody was fully on board. I went to our auditor, Bob Litz, because it involved a lot of his staff and people in helping with the process at full buy-in, and basically we had a group of about 11 people, CFOs, CPAs, business leaders, that we assembled for a series of meetings, and we took a very deep dive into the budget, how it's created, the trends, and kind of the direction that the county is going to be going. It really helped us to take a real hard look at not only past budgets, but future budgets and what they could look like.
And one of the conclusions that the Financial Action Network made is that the county is on solid financial footing, but they were also tasked with helping ensure that the county maintain that solid footing in the future.
You are absolutely correct. We have a very strong record for decades of county commissioners and the diligence that they have done in assembling the budget and hiring the right people and in managing, administering the county.
And Commissioner Bender, as far as talking about government in particular, certainly the private sector has to innovate and adapt to try and cut costs to make sure that those numbers trickle down to their bottom line, or for nonprofits to make sure they can more effectively provide services. As far as Minnehaha County is concerned in government, how, as the managers of the county, so to speak, as commissioners, how do you help encourage or prioritize making sure that tax dollars are spent responsibly, effectively, and efficiently?
You know, I think we use a lot of the same tools and tactics that people do use in the private sector or use in nonprofits. We look closely at budgets every year. We question staffing levels. And then we look at ways that we can innovate in programs that might help to not only provide better services, but reduce costs. You know, one example that comes to mind kind of quickly is we've been a leader in the state in trying to implement a pretrial services program that would allow us to provide information to judges so that they can make more timely and efficient and effective decisions about who really should stay in jail pending their trial and who can be released at little or no risk to society. So that they can go home, stay with their families, keep their jobs, continue to, maintain their lives in a way that hopefully will help to keep them long-term out of the system. That not only saves tax dollars when we don't incarcerate people, shockingly enough, a night in the jail is a pretty expensive endeavor, and so we'd prefer not to do that from a pure financial standpoint, but also just from a society and policy standpoint. I think, there are some people that we want to have stay in jail because we are scared. Public safety demands it, but there are some people who are arrested that we think can stay out in society with a lot of the programs we have 24/7 or with, some kind of, GPS tracking system or something. And so that's been very effective. We're still at the early stages of that, so we're monitoring how effective that is. But there are similar programs like that we have looked at. We've been very innovative in seeking grant dollars and have used grants from the MacArthur Foundation and others to look at other programs that we can implement or where we can hire positions using grant money and not using taxpayer dollars. So those would be a couple of many that I could highlight.
And one thing, too, that the Commission has taken a priority on is juvenile justice reform in taking that from the adult level as well. And nationally, Minnehaha County has been a leader in that subject, and as the county continues to work on implementing some of those best practices. But commissioners from Minnehaha County have been asked to speak around the country at some different legislative conferences as well.
Yeah, it's been great to be recognized as a leader in some of those programs, and they're win-wins for all the citizens of Minnehaha County. They're good for the juveniles, and they've allowed us to downsize our JDC, and at one point we were looking at having to build a new facility, and we were able to back off on that. So it's a win from a policy standpoint, and it's also a win from a financial standpoint. So we look for those kinds of things that are wins all the way around.
So we want to put the people in jail that scare us, not that make us mad. And the cost of housing an individual is high, but the societal costs of taking it could be a family breadwinner that made a bad choice one night, and taking them away from their family to be incarcerated over a few days, and taking them away from their job, and the other societal implications of that. We want to make sure that we're putting and keeping the right people in jail, the ones that scare us.
Well, thank you for that rundown on those subjects. We'll take a brief break here and take another look at a different video of what the Minnehaha County Highway Department is doing right now. And when we come back, we'll discuss the 2020 budget for Minnehaha County, the proposed budget rather, and then also discuss some of the driving factors in the decision to opt out during the 2020 budget year.
Aw, the beautiful gift of adoption. Wait, not that kind of adoption. We're talking highway adoption. Forget the dirty diapers or the chewed up shoes. It's time to face the open road. Or at least a 2-mile stretch of highway. They might not be as cute and cuddly, but ditches need love too. After all, you can help the environment, be deemed a community hero, and promote your organization for free. Be a highway hugger. Adopt a highway today. Minnehaha County Highway Department, celebrating 100 years of happy highways.
Welcome back to Inside Minnehaha County. We're here with Commissioners Bender and Karski to discuss Minnehaha County's budget and some different trends that are affecting Minnehaha County operations. During the previous segments, we talked about some of the responsibilities required by state statute of counties, and during this last segment, we'll talk about the proposed 2020 fiscal year budget. Commissioner Bender, the county budget is under some financial pressures from public safety. Could you discuss a little bit more what is causing the county budget to grow?
Yeah, I mean, in short, you said it. What causes the county budget to grow is our public safety responsibilities. You look at our non-public safety areas of our budget, and they've been relatively static. The auditor's office, the treasurer's office, register of deeds, those areas of our budget have, grown at less than the cost of living increases. It's the public safety realm that has been a cost driver. And that's not to say that the folks in the sheriff's office and the different attorneys' offices aren't managing their budget well and responsibly. I would make a strong argument that they are. It's just that we have these outside costs of increased crime. We at the county don't set the statutes that say what is a crime. We are just responsible to deal with folks that are accused of violating those state statutes, and that's where we've seen our really big cost drivers, our big increases.
And we actually have a graphic that we could quickly reference about those specific public safety expenses. What would you say about how those are growing?
You see increases in the sheriff's office, but where we've seen really significant increases have been in the court side, where we really have virtually no control, and in the public defense and the state's attorney's offices. Those offices have all been under a lot of pressure. You could argue that we've played catch up a little bit, but there's significant increases in all of those areas.
And then Commissioner Karski, referencing how those different public safety expenditures impact the proposed budget for 2020, why is the Commission opting out?
Well, as we talked earlier, our revenues are increasing at a rate somewhere between 3 and 4% a year on average for the last several years, but our public safety expenses are going up closer to 8 or 9% a year. It's just an untenable situation. We have to address it. The only way for us to address it is through an opt-out. 94% of our spending is required by state statute. We have to hire the sheriff and the deputies, the state's attorney, the public defender, the treasurer, the auditor, etc. 94% of our budget goes to that. Only 3% is authorized by state statute that we choose to do, like hire a human services director. With almost 600 employees, we need a human services director, human resources, I'm sorry. Information technology, the cyber attacks and just managing our system for our taxpayers is crucial from an IT perspective. Very little goes into a discretionary spending. We also fund stuff out of the authorized, like the fairgrounds. They get a small portion of our budget. The Compass Center, the Children's Inn, the Family Visitation Center are all things we fund with marriage and divorce fees that go with when you register for those types of things, go to fund some of those things. So, as Commissioner Bender said, most of our increases to our budget have been coming not because of poor administration by our public safety people, but simply because of we hear about it all the time, the increases in crime. We have to address it, and we have to make sure we are putting the right people in jail.
And so we discussed briefly about some of those public safety pressures that are causing county expenses to increase. The other non-public safety departments have been growing at about 1% a year. So what does that mean for the overall budget?
Well, unfortunately, the part that's growing at less than 1% a year is only about 28% of the budget. So, when you look at 66% of our budget going to public safety, that's what's driving our expenses in the county. We want to make sure that if you need to go to visit the county because you want to pay your taxes, you want to register a vehicle, that you get service and you're not waiting unreasonable amounts of time, that we provide a good service to you when you come to the county.
And there are also resources online where citizens can conduct business
Exactly.
as well.
Please.
Commissioner Bender, as far as the opt-out, how would you see it affecting the average taxpayer?
Well, we've voted to authorize an opt-out of $6.5 million, but we don't intend to use that. We hope that will get us through 4 or 5 years at least. What we are intending to use for our next budget is $1.9 million. We have a history now of doing this where we opt out for more than is needed and try to very judiciously use that amount. We actually thought we were going to have to opt out last year, and we really sharpened our pencils and decided that we could get by with a little bit of opt-out that was left. But if we use that $1.9 million for next year, how that would affect the average or a typical homeowner of a $150,000 home, for example, is that would be right under $20. It'd be $19.10 for a $150,000 house. If you have a $200,000 house, then you're looking closer to a $25 increase in your taxes. And we don't take that lightly. I mean, we know we pay taxes ourselves. We know that it's a difficult year for a lot of farmers and ag folks in our community. So while I think that's a manageable amount of taxes, we recognize it's an increase in taxes, and we do take that responsibility very seriously.
And that's the increase for the whole year?
For the whole year, yeah.
Okay.
So just slightly over $1 a month if you've got a $150,000 house.
And we've really just begun to scratch the surface on some of the responsibilities and duties that counties provide as required by statute, as well as authorized, and a small amount of discretionary as well. If citizens did want to become more involved and learn more about the county, what are some different options for participating or becoming more aware?
There's many different ways. The most obvious, maybe to me, is attend a county commission meeting. We meet every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Love to have you. We take public input. If you want to call us, if you want to call the county commission office, all our meetings are online, so you can watch them at your convenience. So there's many different ways to find out what's going on and to contact us.
The website is a great source of information if you take some time out there. If you're dealing with flooding Right now, there's information for FEMA on our website, and just about every service that we provide, you can find some information out on that website. So it's a great source. And I think all of the commissioners are pretty accessible. So you can email us, you can call us, that information's available as well. So, reach out. We like to hear from folks.
Well, thank you for serving in elected office, and also thank you for coming on the program to share a little bit more about the county today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in to Inside the County Commission.